Welcome to the Secret Art of Business. My guest today is Bill Faust, who is a very brilliant person at ology. You don't even make the face. It's true. It's true. You've been there for a really long
Thank you.
time. And I'm going to have you start off by talking a little bit about ology. And first, thanks for being here. And let's talk about ology.
Thanks. I'm really thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me. And Ology is a branding and marketing agency that focuses almost exclusively on the education market. So most of our clients are colleges and universities across the country, and we love working in that category because it's very purposeful, and we're just trying to help schools find students, raise money, build their brands, build their reputations, all those kind of fun things. And so I didn't plan for this to be my sort of the end of my career, but I'm really happy because I love it.
That's awesome. And fun fact, I did used to freelance for ology back in the day. It was under a different name at that time. But then again, as you said, you evolved into this whole educational space. How did you get there? What was the catalyst that kind of propelled you into that?
It's a great story because it was a happy accident. And I'll try not to be too long-winded about it, but like back in about 2005 or six, my partner, Bev Ryan, had her son at the Wellington School in Columbus, right? And of course, as Bev always did back then, and still today does somewhat, like volunteered ology to do some work for them. And so we did a whole kind of rebranding of the Wellington School. And it was at the time that their new head of school was coming in, so it was really timely. And one of the people that worked there was the wife of a woman named Margaret Dragovich, who was at Ohio Wesleyan. And she sort of like brought our, Beth brought our work home, and Margaret saw it and said, wow, that's really good. Like, and we need this at Ohio Wesleyan. So they invited us up. They had gotten some extra budget at Ohio Wesleyan from an alum who was a big donor. And they said, we want to rebrand the place. And we said, sure, that sounds fun, and you're actually going to pay us. And that was like our first full sort of beginning to end project in higher ed. And it just went so well. And then, of course, one thing led to another. Margaret left there and went to another school in New York and hired us again. And then we
Perfect.
started to share the work with people like Capital University, and they hired us. And of course, we'd always done things for CCAD, and they asked us to do more in kind of a more formal way. And then we eventually started to get attention paid to us by schools like Purdue and schools that were nowhere near Columbus. And we just followed the trail. And by 2015, we were probably like 70% focused on higher ed. And we just said, this is fun. Let's keep going. And kind of walked away from a lot of things that we had been doing and just completely focused on education. So now it's like that's what we are. We're a national agency in the higher ed market, mostly higher ed. We do some other categories, but
Yeah, I love that you found this specialization that really you win at. You seem to have figured out what it is that these institutions need, and you're able to deliver that. So I will just say, if you know of an institution that could probably use a rebranding, and there are many, many schools out there that could probably use it, ology is definitely the one to call. And I'm sure everything is on your website where people can kind of take a look at that as well.
yeah, thank you. And our initial work was a lot of branding, but now we do sort of full service marketing campaigns, media. We just decided we're going to focus on one industry, but broaden what ology does. So now we're a full service agency, but focused on education, because it is a nuanced market. You kind of do have to know,
Absolutely.
and it's even within education. If you're working on a fundraising effort, that's different than working on a recruiting effort. It's different than working on a campaign to influence the rankings. Like, there's just all sorts of nuance that I think if you don't know it, it's hard. It's going to be hard to be successful.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing, that it is so specialized because you are speaking to students, you're speaking to the teachers and professors, you're speaking to the parents, and trying to get it all together, the same message together, that to create this one unit of message for each of these schools and colleges and universities. So it caters to a lot of different people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of the few categories where the stakeholders are just like you said, there are so many different groups.
So many.
And these days, there, there's some of them are quite vocal, and it's a category that's kind of under fire. We had a new identity. We don't do a lot of new logos and identities in higher ed because they're kind of time honored. But every once in a while, school will change their identity, and we had a school launch a new logo last week, and there's just a lot of social media,
Oh my gosh, you made a big change.
yeah. I mean, basically, it's going to be successful and it's going to be fine over time. But we always sort of like brace for it because, especially alumni, come out of the woodwork
Oh,
saying
of
like,
course. They got to buy all new stuff now.
yeah, but yeah, it is change. I mean, and everybody relates to a school when you went there, which might be 10, 20, 30,
Oh
40
yeah.
years
Oh
ago.
yeah.
And so if you mess with this color, if you mess with this logo, they always get
And
upset.
it's no different than what we see a lot too is when sports teams change their logos and
Right,
things like that. It's that same sort of allegiance that people have.
right, right. Loyalty. And it's very emotional because for most people, whether you were, no matter what kind of education you had after high school, for most people it was kind of a coming of age experience, and that's when you might have met your wife. It's when I met my wife, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So, because I would say when somebody changes a bank logo, nobody cares, right? But when they change
You're
a
right.
college
We merge all the
logo,
time and nobody cares.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
a great comparison.
There's a famous.
Speaking of education,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No, 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 no,
Okay,
no.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just transition into just education in general because you started in design and marketing. When you stepped into the doors of your university and college, did you know that this is where you would end up? Is this kind of always been kind of a dream for you?
Sort of. I think in high school I was all about music and the visual arts, so I was completely in the arts wing of the high school. Um, Music felt too competitive to me. I would go to these festivals and sit next to musicians who were like 10 times better than me. I'm like, yeah, that's probably.
Mm,
And so visual arts, photography, design sounded better. I had a great art teacher. He was very worldly and got a master's from Notre Dame, and so he sort of knew like beyond my little town in Pennsylvania, and he pointed me towards design. And for a whole bunch of random reasons, Ohio State sort of clicked financially, and it was cool that it had a big football program and that people had heard of
yeah,
it,
yeah.
And all of my high school buddies were going to Carnegie Mellon or places like that. So, and then I think what I learned in school and then my first jobs was that I still love the creative economy, and design and everything's related to that. But I was sort of more of the businessy guy, right?
Hmm.
Like there were so many designers who were better than me, but like they couldn't present their concepts or they struggled with the research. And so I was always like, let me do that. Let me do the setup. Let me do the packaging of this. You be the idea person. I'll be kind of the rational person who's explaining it to people in business terms. And that's when I just realized, like, okay, I want to stay in the creative business, but I want to I want to help creative people, you know, do business basically. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that sort of drove like where I went and going back to school for an MBA and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I fall into that same sort of area where I found that I excelled when I kind of can go left and right brain on in some instances where it's like I know what's good, I know how to sell it, I know what team I would want to work on it, that sort of thing. So yeah, it's that part of I guess the orchestration of it that I don't know, that just really kind of appeals. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the best photographer, but I'm going to find the best photographer, that sort of
Right.
thing. And if I know the client may not like this at first, but I know if I explain it to why this is going to work, it's going to work. And sometimes people don't have those skills. And I'm just going to say we're very valuable, Phil. So
Yeah. No,
not that
absolutely.
we
Absolutely. Yeah. I've always, I think of it this way. There's like generative creative people who are the idea people, right?
hmm.
And then there's kind of the people that converge. Like they can sort of look at the ideas and go like, yeah, those two, no, these three, yes, let's merge this one. And then let's present it this way. And
Yeah.
like, I'm that person. And,
Yeah.
you need both, I think.
Absolutely, because and I'm sure you do too, meet people that you're just in awe of their talent, and it's like I just could never be that, and then they're coming with some of the best innovative, creative ideas.
Yeah, I remember at Ohio State, they were great. This is a long time ago, but they were great bringing in guest instructors from, especially from like Germany, from BMW, from, they had Bauhaus roots, and they blew me away. But some of them couldn't communicate well. Some of them
Right,
couldn't
right.
articulate like why it made sense, and so I sort of spotted that gap early on.
Cool. I'm going to go back a little bit further and ask you, what did you do as a kid? You touched upon music, but um, what did you do as a kid that really resonated with you that was really, really fun?
I mean, I think I was into drawing very early. Unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was really young, but
Oh,
he was an artist, not professionally, but so in our basement, like his workshop still existed for me when I was growing up, because my mom just left it alone, and there were sketches and drawings and paintings
oh, how
um,
wonderful.
and just stuff that I went down there and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And so I did that. Of course, I drew the things that a little boy draws, like army men and airplanes and that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But I love that. And then I think music's always been kind of the counterbalance to that. And I got into music at a very early age as well.
What drew you to music?
Again, probably two, three, 3 out of 5 kids in my family. So 3 of my siblings all went into music in professionally, right? So 2 of them were band directors, and then my sister
Oh, wow.
pursued an opera career, and then she eventually evolved into a speech therapist. But that it was just always part of what was going on, and then I think when I met kids who liked band in school, you kind of find your people, right? Because they're a little
Hmm.
weird, they're a
Hmm.
little weird, they're a little different, and that was me. And so I think those things. And then my brother, who has passed away since, but he was 17 years older than me, was a really good saxophone player, and
Oh, wow.
would bring me records like Maynard Ferguson and things like that. And as soon as I heard like legit jazz, like not the big band stuff, but like real jazz, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so that's never stopped. Like I'm still a jazz junkie. So
Very cool. So that's going to lead me to the next question is, while you are, you know, changing lives in the school space, what do you do when you unplug?
I would say, well, lately spend time with our grandson. We're first time
Oh, well, that's the
grandparents.
best.
Yeah, in the past like 18 months. So that's a big one. I read a lot, and I'm trying to read even more. And I also collect musical instruments, so that's a big one. And because I've met some amazing people across the country who collect the weird things that I collect, and even internationally, I've met some people. So again, they all kind of sort of point towards art and music. Except I think my reading tastes are more eclectic. I read a lot of military history,
Oh, wow.
and lately I just love like Band of Brothers, and they just had the third of that series called Masters of the Air, which is all about the
Oh, yes, yes. I've
World
been
War
watching that
II
too.
pilots, and my dad was a World War II pilot, so
Oh,
I
wow.
I go down that rabbit hole all the time, reading stuff about that. I just find it a fascinating period in our history, but I read other history too. But yeah,
Yeah, speaking of like Band of Brothers and that sort of thing and Masters of the Air, I just again just watched that in awe in that people did this. Human beings like hopped into these,
yeah,
planes that were just, welded together. And we could see them at museums, and even then you're like, wow, they flew this over the
yeah,
ocean. It's incredible. And the
it is.
bravery and the skill and just all of that is so, and the strategy is insane. I mean, it
It
really
is.
is.
It is. I've read a lot about, especially the like the Eighth Air Force. Not to get too in the weeds, but these were the guys that were sort of based in England and then started, bombing Germany. And I mean, the loss rates were ridiculous because every time a plane went down,
Absolutely.
you lost like 10 guys at one time, unless they bailed
Yes.
out, which they didn't always do. And they were figuring it out as they went.
Right.
Yeah, I just find World War II bravery. I mean, any
Oh, yeah.
soldier, but especially World War II. It was like the things people did that I read
Oh,
about. I'm like,
like I
I
said,
don't think I could do it today.
no. I don't know what they were made of, but it was not
Hmm.
what we're made of today anymore. But it's incredible stuff, and like we kind of just breeze over, it's incredibly sad in many parts because there was a lot of loss, obviously, but
Yeah,
but sometimes that sort of thing is necessary, especially like in a World War II sort of situation.
right.
But I'm gonna change gears to something a little happier, and that's gonna
Okay,
be
great.
musical instruments. What made you decide to start collecting those, and what have you collected so far?
Well, I collect kind of one thing ish, and they are called cornets. And the cornet is sort of for most people a small trumpet, a short trumpet.
Hmm.
But what most people don't realize, and I actually just gave a talk on this in Columbus at the McConnell Art Center
Oh, that's
in
awesome.
Worthington, which was fun. But what most people don't realize is that the cornet was sort of first, and back in the Victorian era, so 1850 to 1900, the cornet was kind of like the electric guitar. Like the famous musicians played a cornet, and they
Oh my
traveled,
goodness.
So you've heard names like John Philip Sousa, and he had a
Mhm.
band, and all sorts of bands. Like every town had a gazebo, and almost every town had a band that was mostly brass musicians. They all sort of grew out of the Civil War because the Civil War regiments had bands. And that was the popular music of the day. And so during that time, cornets were, like I said, like electric guitars. And so a lot of them were made, and not just normal, little brass instruments, but they had engraving.
Yeah,
They were bejeweled, they were silver plated, gold plated. And so if you can find this stuff, which, gets a little harder each year, there's just some amazing stories behind some of these instruments. So it's to me, again, it's not just like it attracts the industrial designer in me because of the designs. It attracts the history buff in me because
absolutely.
you can actually trace some of these things, the people, and so on. So it's fun.
Yeah, and I'm sure it touches that art spot too,
Hmm.
because a lot of that stuff, I mean, they're just pieces of art at that point when they're
Hmm.
engraved and they're old and they're,
Yep.
meticulously made and just beautiful, beautiful works.
Yeah.
And so do you just like keep them like hanging up? Or are they like stowed away?
Um, I have, yeah,
You got the
I have
favorites out?
mostly that. Yeah, I have about 90 ish.
Oh, wow.
And I've
I did
had
not.
more though, and I have
Oh my goodness.
colleagues that have like in the multiple hundreds. But so for the most part, most of them are like in a closet that is sort of
Sure, sure.
designed for this. But I do have some on the wall in both our homes,
I love
and
it.
then I have some just sort of out in their original cases because they also came in these sort of beautiful wooden
Oh, wow. Yeah.
cases that were like felt lined or with like inlaid, kind of wood designs and things like that. Um, and some of them are playable, so I do that once in a while, and some of them aren't. So they're more, kind of objects of art. But yeah, probably at any one time, there's no more than like a dozen sort of out and about.
I love it. I could totally nerd out on that because again, just the
Yeah,
craftsmanship of that is, like I said, it's so fascinating and so beautiful that somebody would take the time to just elevate it to something so beautiful.
yeah.
Well, Bill, I got no more questions.
Well,
Um,
this was easy.
that's great. That's what I would like it to be. But like I said, I love all the facets that you have. Love all that you've done, and you've done so much of the community too. So thank you for that. And just thank you for being such a champion here in Columbus and for the people to play cornets and for all of that. And just, I guess, just enjoy your reading. You've had an excellent career. And I love that you do read because there's always something very cool about people that always continue to learn. They just find something and continue to
Right.
learn as they just you know, find one thing that they're really good at and they're like, no, but this isn't enough. I want to learn more. So I love that about you as well.
Thank you. No, this has been a pleasure, and I appreciate it. So it's fun to be on, and just love Columbus, and just love all the things that you're doing. So thanks again.
Well, thank you, and I hope we see each other soon in
Yep.
person. Right. Bye.